It's the week of Homebound's India release, and it just so happens to be the week when it's also been announced as India's official entry for the Oscars. There's a lot that's happened to the film over the past year, from Martin Scorsese coming on board as producer, to its 9-minute ovation at Cannes during its premiere, to its recent People's Choice Award at TIFF, to its cinematographer Pratik Shah being called out in a Me Too case recently. It is also director Neeraj Ghaywan's much-awaited second full-length feature that has heart-wrenching performances by Ishaan Khatter as Mohammad Shoaib Ali, Vishal Jethwa as Chandan Kumar, and Janhvi Kapoor as Sudha Bharti. Today, I am recommending Homebound. That Neeraj Ghaywan is a political filmmaker is a given. That Neeraj Ghaywan tells stories about the caste system in our country might also be a given. But in my most recent interview for Homebound that's also on the channel, something that he said struck me. He said my politics cannot supersede the film I make, as that would make me a propagandist. The narrative, therefore, is front and center for Ghaywan. And like his first and seminal film that incidentally completes a decade in 2025, Masan, with Homebound 2, you first react to these people on screen, their story, their pain, and then Neeraj leaves you rife with questions about identity, friendship, caste politics, and how we treat the other. Shoaib and Chandan are two friends, both constantly shamed for their identities as a Muslim and a Dalit man, and want to free themselves from it. They think becoming police constables will change their fate because vardi na caste na class dekhti hai. You realize how this is not just a job. And even though since it's a civil exam and odds are against them because of the sheer numbers of people who apply for these very limited spots, they need it so badly just to escape the lives they live. The year is 2020 in rural India. On the way, they meet Sudha Bharti, played by Janhvi Kapoor, also a Dalit, but more well-off than Chandan and Shoaib. And because she studied, she seems to have found her way up and out of the quagmire. Neither Chandan nor Shoaib are graduates, so it's tough for them to find other jobs, or at least those that would allow them some everyday izzat. How Shoaib and Chandan climb out of this spiral, or even do they? And what happens when COVID strikes forms the broad strokes of this story. Look, it's only been 5 years since COVID, and it can be extremely triggering for a lot of us, especially if we lost loved ones. However, COVID itself was a different experience depending on where you lived, what you did, and who you identified as. It's like they say about the Mumbai monsoons, an Instagram story for those looking from their windows in their homes, while a question of life and livelihood for those living on the streets. Here's where Neeraj's genesis of his narrative actually appears. The film's original story was inspired by the New York Times 2020 essay Taking Amrit Home by Kashmiri journalist Basharat Peer. It recounts the story of two young migrant workers in Surat who were caught in the COVID-19 lockdown in March 2020. Through the pandemic, we saw images of migrant workers who had to walk miles and miles to reach home since they had no means of traveling. Homebound therefore finds its name literally in this journey taken by two friends. Only Neeraj mixes fact with fiction, retrofitting and breathing life into the subjects of this article, only to perhaps make them even more alive. Varun Drover reunites with Neeraj in Homebound, this time on the dialogue team. So does Sridhar Dubey, who previously appeared in Neeraj's short Juice that's on YouTube. The screenplay by Neeraj, Peer and Sumit Roy engages you so much that you start living like an invisible third friend alongside Chandan and Shoaib. Neeraj's use of close-ups of their fists and faces make you feel their every insult and injury. How he weaponizes recreational activities like a cricket match or a party make the viewer very aware of our privilege if they didn't face these microaggressions. And yet, it takes you back to deeper, more universal spaces within your own heart of all the times that you felt small or unwanted. It is at once miraculously specific and universal. I must mention the rest of the cast, particularly a fantastic Shalini Vatsa, who plays Chandan's mother alongside his sister, played by Harshika Parmar. Chandan might be down on the privilege ladder when he's out of his home, but within it, he gets to study over his sister because while you could belong to the same caste, your gender could place you higher. Neeraj plays with privilege like a roll of dice. Characters go up and down on the board depending on where they are and who they are besides. If you watched Neeraj's Geeli Poochi a few years ago, starring Aditi Rao Hedri and Konkana Sen Sharma plays Bharti Mandal, a Dalit woman who's twice as more subjugated because of her sexuality. The intersections are where Neeraj's films go beyond the obvious high-low binaries. He's less interested in telling us who's right and who's wrong, and more invested in showing us the daily negotiations of people who exist at these fault lines of caste, class, religion, and gender. Homebound becomes, in that sense, not just a film about a pandemic or two friends, but about the invisible architecture of inequality that still defines our country. By the end of Homebound, you're left with an ache born of recognition. It reminds you of the journeys home that so many could not complete. And it insists, quietly but firmly, that cinema can still be political without being propaganda, and that a filmmaker's gaze can hold empathy and anger in equal measure. Soothing and scathing at once. In a year when India sends Homebound as its Oscar entry, the choice feels not just cinematic but moral. It signals that our most powerful stories today are not only those of heroes in capes or palaces, but of ordinary young men and women who want what any of us do: dignity, belonging, and a place to call home. That's why today and for years to come, I am recommending Homebound. I end today's video with a request. Yes, do subscribe to the channel, please share the review if you like it, but beyond that, make time for watching these films. Whether it's Sabar Bonda to Jugnuma that's in theatres since last week, to Homebound and Bad Girl that will be in theatres this week and onwards, these are fantastic films and they really need audiences like you to show up and make a difference. Trust me, your ticket counts. So let's go and celebrate the good ones. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Rotalks and I hope that you liked our review. We'll be back next week, hopefully, with something else that I'd like to recommend. I've been watching a lot of things recently, but I must confess, I went in to watch Homebound and I came out and I couldn't talk to anybody for the next 2 hours. This film has deeply impacted me, and I do hope that writing this or sharing this with you will convince you to go and watch it. I think it deserves to be watched by as many people as possibly can. English has gone completely wrong, but emotions are right, guys.